Thank you. You sort of disdain the folks who are not actually using the social media they're talking about their ROI on. Well, what if your decision makers or your consumers aren't using that social media either?
Well, then you shouldn't be there. But my belief is that that is not true. I do not believe between Facebook from an age standpoint and LinkedIn from a B2B standpoint, I do not believe that, outside of, here's a good one. I helped a nursing home because it was a friend of a friend, not for VaynerMedia, not for me, not for a case study, just a couple pieces of advice. They're like, listen, our clients are 80 to 90 years old, right? I'm like, they're not. Their kids are your actual client. There's plenty of 40, 50, and 60-year-olds on Facebook, and when they started making content for them, they started converting. And so here's another one. If you look at the dynamics, here's why I like Snapchat, Vine, and Instagram to sell to 40-year-old women even though they're not there. If you look at the data right now, 40 to 50-year-old women that have daughters that are between the age of 8 and 16, the 8 to 16-year-old is affecting their mother's buying habits so much more than 10 or 20 years ago where it was the other way around, because we're living through the youthification of our society. If you look at the habits, the way they dress, the way they act, what they do day in and day out, the average 45-year-old woman today is acting more similar to a 27-year-old woman only 20 years ago. That if you sit right now, men and female, and you think about what your parent looked like when they were your age right this minute, people thought they were done only 2 or 3 generations ago at 50, 60, 70, right? Now we're so lucky, we're living longer, we're taking better care of ourselves, and we're living through this massive youthification, right? The cougar movement that was so fun to make jokes about is a very real thing. And so we have Dove, we have other brands, we're marketing to 15-year-old girls to make their moms buy something. Because if their daughter thinks it's cool, their mom will buy it. And so I don't know what you do. So legal services is a great example of being in the content business. So let me explain where I'll go with you on this. Legal services. I'm going to give you an example of Guinness beer. Guinness beer had a problem about 60 years ago. They had pub sales decline in the UK for the first time ever. And they're like, what are we gonna do? They went and did old school market research and surveyed people in bars. And they found out the 2 biggest things that people talked about were soccer and trivia. So they created the Guinness Book of World Records. So I don't know how many of you know that. I didn't know this until even a year ago. I'm just curious, how many people had no idea that Guinness beer started Guinness Book of World Records? So what they did was they started a media company to solve their problem. I would tell you in legal services that if you're focused on a certain genre, that in this book, and I spend a little time on it, it's a whole nother book and a genre, I believe, I'm gonna make a pretty big statement that I want everybody to wrap their head around. I believe every person in this room right now, and the organizations that you're involved in, whether business-wise, NGO, whatever you do, every one of you and it are in the media business. I now believe that you're in the media business, comma, legal services. I'm in the media business, comma, agency, comma, wine. It's why I started my wine show. So I actually think what you need to seriously consider in this world is to become a media company, meaning put out content, long form, around not necessarily legal, but the kind of things that interest the people that you're trying to court. And then in a BuzzFeed.com way where you have no ads, but every 5th post is a native ad. Think of it as advertorial 2.0. Think about you. This is very rogue, so I know it's gonna be tough to digest, but I wanna pitch you something. Think about you starting a golf website, right? Literally covering golf, competing against Golf Digest, and that every 7th post was promoting your business. I actually believe that that is going to be a blueprint of people doing business, that they're gonna start creating media and content around the interest of the target that they're trying to recruit for their business.
Over here to the left, a question.
And I know it's left field, but I can see, listen, I just want to stick on this because it's such a big point, and I think it's the next decade. The thought that we have to be in the media business because the cost of entry is 0. And not truly 0, but in comparison to starting Golf Digest or the Golf Network by putting a golfdaily.com on WordPress and then producing micro content to drive traffic, the cost of entry is so low. thus getting those use. So it's a very interesting thing. I've been testing it. It's remarkable. We're launching our first ever. We have a cracker, and we're launching the leading cheese review site of the internet in March, and we're gonna be, by building that, it's gonna be a gateway to the cracker, and we don't necessarily want them to match the cracker and the cheese. It's just that we want to elevate the brand equity of the cracker, and by doing it with high-end cheese, it will do that for us. But that's the kind of stuff, and that's owning the media instead of buying banner ads on the media.